public sector banks or your typical even private banks will cripple him with the documentation requirements, whereas your fintechs just don't understand what this poor guy needs. He's kind of stuck in the middle.
Hmm.
That's where you have it. बैंक को उसको पैसा मिलेगा नहीं, जो उसको पैसा दे सकता है उसको बोलेगा भैया तुम अपने दिखाओ, मेरे को अपने फाइनेंशियल्स दिखाओ, मेरे को तुम्हारा स्टॉक ऑडिट करना है। तो बोलते हैं भैया मेरा ये धंधा है, मेरे ये पैसे आते हैं, तुम मेरे को बताओ। राइट, this is typically what you have. So there's a way you need to go about it, there's a way you need to fund it. So I think we're in for interesting times.
Hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
And we have a big game changer in our midst. It's called Geo.
Yeah. With the smartphone.
Correct.
Don't worry. I think everyone said everyone is there. So if I always tell the world, see, at least our categories are still the safest. The big daddy has only 2% market share.
Mhm.
Right. So don't worry. No matter how big the next big daddy will be, he can still maximum have 3% market share. उतना पैसा ही नहीं मिलेगा उसको कभी life में.
I think India, that is a very interesting market, highly heterogeneous. Especially it's for everyone.
So should we just get to know the other speakers also quickly?
Yeah, they're just coming in. Devi has just come in. Hi, Devi. Yeah, you are able to hear us, Devi? Your mic. Yeah. All right. So we'll just wait for a couple of more minutes. Devi here heads HR for Flexi Loans. So that's Devi.
Hi guys.
It's, hi. Hi.
Hi, Devi.
Hi.
Yeah. So we are waiting for, I think, we are now 3, the other 2. Yeah, Vedanaran is
Yes.
just coming in, I think. He
And
came in.
Avinash. Yeah.
Yeah. Getting disconnected, I think. Avinash is, yeah. Hey, hi Veda. Hi Avinash, Vedanaran and Avinash both have joined. So I think we are now good to go. So all the 5 of you are here. Will Saikat, we can go live right now. So okay, let's start. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for making the time to be here. I will do a quick introduction to the topic and to our panelists, and welcome all the participants who are joining us live on YouTube. So here is so it's about an hour that we are going to spend together. Oh, it's not yet 4 o'clock, but I think we are all there. Okay, so maybe
benefits of meeting virtually. If you had an in-person meeting, at least one of us would have been stuck in traffic.
Nice to meet
I know.
Hey, Avinash,
So,
how are you doing? Long time not seen you.
Hey, yes, how are you?
Very good, sir.
Avinash,
Hey, buddy. Good to see you.
good to see you, man.
many of you know each other, so that's a good thing. Akshay also said that he knows Vedanaran. So yeah, so that's a
Sure. Hi, Akshay.
yeah, good. So we'll wait for maybe a few more seconds so that 4 o'clock we'll just start.
Yeah.
Just to be fair on the people on YouTube who are supposed to join. Yeah. These days, so many webinars keep happening, So
Absolutely.
I don't know. There could be a fatigue very soon.
Well, it's
All right,
already started. It's commonly called Zoom fatigue. That's what I've heard. And
oh, so it's a new word which has come in, Zoom
yes.
fatigue. All right, so we'll start. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this webinar on fintech. So, just to set the context, I remember when I was a small kid, maybe in the early 70s, maybe 5-7 years old, we used to run to the corner shop to buy a toffee or something with just a few coins, 1 paise coin used to hold some value those days. We used to get a sugar candy for 1 paise. I don't know, many of our audience today may not really relate to it. Certainly my children don't relate to it. So it's a very, very different world. And when I started working in 1992, my boss used to like me. So, Standard Chartered and Citibank used to offer credit cards. So those days, those credit cards used to be like, some kind of a great privilege to be offered. So since my boss used to like me, so he organized a credit card for me. I didn't know what to do with that credit card. So I remember from the early 90s, that credit card wasn't really accepted in many of the places that I visited. And there was a charge the merchants used to charge if I swiped the credit card. That was the time, and possibly just in about 8, 9 years, 10 years, things changed so much that the credit cards were a lot more acceptable. And take another 10 years from there, things have dramatically changed. So I think the point that I'm trying to make, ladies and gentlemen, is that the change has been quantum. A quantum leap has taken place in the world of finances, the way money circulates, and the change has been very quick. Possibly 2016 was one of those events when the demonetization happened, and some of this digital economy really got a boost. Of course, there are many fintech players who existed before 2016, but I think 2016 was a defining moment in our fintech industry. So it naturally plays a great value in our economy. Today, it's a great opportunity. The amount of investments that this particular sector has attracted is some 28%. And the acceptance of digital transactions, some research by Data Labs shows that acceptance is 59% in India. Apparently, it is the second largest in the world. So all these this is good news for us. So we have an illustrious panel today with us to kind of talk about this. And as this pandemic has struck the world, I think we as a recruiting and staffing player in the country, we thought we could contribute in one way by facilitating a conversation between experts of the particular industry sector. So we are doing industry focused discussions. So today's event is fintech focused. So we would do this discussion in 2 segments. The first segment is to really look at what has the last 3 months possibly has taught us, something new that we have done, and the outlook that we have for the future. And the second segment that we would focus on would be based on this outlook, the way we think that this industry is going to shape, what changes we need to do in the way we run our business, right from HR, finance, IT, operations, maybe credit appraisals, underwriting, and so on and so forth. So these are the 2 segments that we will do. So just to give a quick introduction to our audience today, those and some of the panelists that we have a I must say that very diverse, illustrious, experienced panel from the industry with us. First of all, from CL side, we have Chami, who heads the sales in our Mumbai office, and Saikat from the marketing team, and of course myself, I run the company CLHR. And in the panel, we have 5 of them. I'll start with Harpuneet. He's again someone with more than 2 decades of experience, 24 years plus experience, has worked in different geographies in the UK and in India. A lot of financial services experience. Currently running a business, building a business, a startup which is in the stealth mode. Possibly it will in the fintech space. Possibly it will get launched soon. Just before this, of this particular engagement, he used to head machine learning and artificial intelligence in Cashi. Cashi is kind of a pretty well-known name in the fintech space. And before that, he worked in Mu Sigma and a few other places where and he has been an entrepreneur himself before this. So that's a very quick introduction to Harpreet. Welcome, Harpreet, to this conference. We would look forward to hearing your perspectives. And then I come to Akshay. Akshay is the founder and CEO, managing director, CEO of Early Salary. It's a 5-year-old, pretty well-known fintech lending company for the employees, the salaried employees particularly. A new concept, use of artificial intelligence to sort of predict who's credit worthy. I think great work that the company has done. Early Salary, pretty well known. So welcome, Akshay, for having been able to make some time. We would look forward to hearing your beliefs, the way you look at the future, and what changes would be required to be done. Then I come to Devi, possibly the youngest in the panel. Devi heads HR in another lending platform, which is focused on SME lending, a company called Flexi Loans. Before this, she has been in the HR function. She has worked in companies like Population Services International, has been in the HR function, currently is building this for the last 2+ years. The company is about four years plus, again, growing as an organization. So welcome, Devi. We would look forward to, our audience will look forward to possibly hearing some of those HR, the way you are acquiring, engaging, developing talent, and the future challenges, and what are your companies and your personal beliefs are about human resources and fintech space. So welcome, Devi. Now we come to Vedanarayan Vedantam, who is the business head from Razorpay, focuses on SME business group. He is a marketing strategist, has been in marketing for a long time, I think associated with some of those very well-known brands in our country, done some of the famous TV commercials while he was with Simplilearn. I think companies like Simplilearn, Healthify Me, a lot of those, and many of the startups he mentors, he has played a very critical role in bringing that company to top of mind amongst audience. He's a faculty in many of the leading business schools in our country. So welcome, Vedanarayan. You have been in marketing. Now you are a P&L leader, and Razorpay kind of a brand which is quite well known. So we would look forward to hearing your perspectives about the future and how you think that the lending business should really work in the days to come. And then finally, I come to Avinash. Avinash is again the CEO, founder of Zaggle. Zaggle is again about 9 years kind of a company, which is again a fintech company. Sorry, yeah, Avinash.
I'm not the founder. The founder is a gentleman called Raj, but I'm the MD and CEO.
Sorry, my bad. So Avinash is the CEO and MD of Zaggle, which is a digital platform for employee employee expenses, rewards, recognition, and many other financial transactions which happen focused on employees. I think that's again the unique thing about Zaggle is, I think it's one of those successful startups which has been cash positive and growing. So that's interesting about Zaggle. I think Avinash, welcome. We look forward to hearing your perspectives. So that's a very quick introduction. Consciously, I was trying to be very quick and not really take much of time. These days, all of us are on social media and LinkedIn and all of these are there. So you just do Google about any of us. I think a lot of history about each one of us is visible. So don't want to take the precious time of others. So I straight away jump into the topic. As I said, there are two segments of it. One segment we will talk about. I would invite each one of you really to talk about what is it that this COVID-19 pandemic has brought to us in terms of the opportunities. Let's focus on the positives, that the opportunities. and how in the last 3 months that we have really tried to improvise a few things. There are many things which have changed, but we can, you could talk about one or two things that you have done, and more importantly, the future, the way you look at it. Yeah. So shall we start with the sequence in which I did the introduction? Is that okay? Harpunit, can we start with you?
Sure. Thank you, Aditya, and it's nice to be here. I'd like to, given that I'm focused on digital lending, so I can give you a little bit of my perspective on the opportunities and what these extraordinary times have taught us, especially from a fintech perspective. I
Right.
think what this time has taught us, we all know about, and Aditya, you put it very well, that let's focus on the opportunity and what this has taught us. I think right off the bat, what this current scenario has taught us is that we all need to focus on what it takes to build a real business. I think we had a few years preceding this current crisis where everybody was very focused on, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, focused on things like, valuation, downloads. But now I think it's time for us all to brace up and say, okay, what is unit economics all about? What is real demand all about? What does it really take to build a bottom line? So I think it's really back to brass tacks for all of us. And really, and this is what's really going to attract investor interest. And this is what's really going to drive valuations and interest in this sector going forward. That's, I think, one of the realities that's hit all of us in the last, as a sector, I'm saying, and I don't mean it individually as a business or anything of that sort. I just think that some moderation has come in as a result,
Okay.
and it's come and it's really accelerated that whole process. It's a cycle. It's a business cycle that happens to
Mm-hmm. Okay.
that's happening, and it's forced all of us to take a very, very hard look.
Mm-hmm.
And that's driven a lot of the innovation and the improvisation. Of
Right.
course, a lot is said about, okay, how we remotely work and how we, digitally or remotely collaborate across teams. So yes, that's one of the biggest things we've had to do. Things like, for example, we were all talk about and okay, how do we, for example, do customer authentication? Now suddenly we're all forced to actually make it happen. For example, with something very simple as video KYC. It's something which has hit us, and it's not going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
And these are things, new underwriting models, for example. Earlier, the easiest thing was, okay, send an agent out there and just get some documents picked up. And this is and the current realities are going to stay with us. And from what I'm hearing from the experts, and all of us are hearing, that this is the new normal. These are things which are not going to go away for some time. So the digital way of working is here to stay. Old underwriting models are not going to are something we'll have to adapt with. So the digital way of working, it's easier said than done. And when I say digital way of working, what I mean is just the ability to originate a loan from the mobile phone of the customer all the way till disbursement and being able to have make repayments happen. Yes, it's a theory which works very well, but to actually make it execute on the ground, I don't think a lot of fintechs are equipped to make that happen. But it's something that's forced all of us to execute as a result of this crisis.
Okay.
So yes, digital is here to stay from that perspective, and it's forced us to make that happen. In the consumer space, yes, it's easy to do, but when it comes to the MSME sector, where consumer awareness has to go hand in hand with actually executing your business, that's
Right.
something which we have all woken up to very, very quickly, and I think Devi can talk about it.
Sure.
Because to make your customer aware, customer awareness is something which has suddenly become an integral part of our business.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
as a
Okay.
result of these prices. And I think that's something that's going to remain going forward.
Okay.
Right?
So good. Thanks, Harpunit. I think you spoke about some 3-4 aspects, if I understood right. One part you talked about the whole perspective towards valuation is changing. Secondly, digital is the way forward and it is going to stay. So the digital way of working, it is not only working from home, but the digital way of working in every
Absolutely.
aspect of the
Digital across
business.
our value chains, both internally and externally.
Right.
You said about it, but the point I'm trying to put across is that this is something which we not only have to talk about in our PowerPoint presentations, but it's something we have to live and breathe going forward.
Right. 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 Then you talked about consumer awareness. All right, so we'll maybe touch upon some of these points in the second segment of it. So that's good. Akshay, what are your perspectives? You talked about some 8 things that you have found. Maybe it's a good opportunity to talk about it. Sorry, you are on mute, Akshay.
I
Yeah.
figured out work from home and work at home. I think that's the personal difference. I think I used to go to sometimes work on Sunday also earlier, but yeah, and work at home is very interesting. Uh, I think that's the most common thing we all picked up. Yeah, I'll first echo Harpuri's points about PNL businesses, right? I think uh, many of our counterparts always question why early salary is not touched last 2-3 rounds of money. Why does it just holding all to all its cash? Why can't you burn it and attract more customers and keep doing that? Many of our VCs who invested came and told us these points. We always said we are cash conservative. We don't like to spend the money. We'll figure out how to grow organically or with better traction, etc. But today it's great. I have my last 2 rounds money lying in the bank undeployed. I may have negative carry on my debt which I have raised, but it's okay. I'm in a great situation, right? Which means that as I come out of this, and as many of us will come out of this uh, COVID situation, only a few of us will be much more positive. I think that I think is the first differentiation of building a company. You need to be earlier. Few people were PNL focused. Some of them are only focused to build large customer bases or AUMs. Uh, I think it will become a norm. Everyone needs to be PNL focused. I think the next, before I come to those 8 points, right? I think the first point there is everyone is a fintech. Every normal bank who did things traditionally in the next 3 months more would be 100% equivalent to any other fintech operating in the market. So the 357 companies who position themselves are fintech. Too bad you're no more fintechs. Every financial entity is a fintech in the next 3 months. Please figure out how you're going to evolve to next layer and next capabilities, right? I think the other component which I noticed was very exciting was I think everyone is eager to learn. I noticed that each and every employee in my company decided that he is not going to spend time on Netflix apart from the first 1 week or 10 days. Everyone has gone and learned something new. You should see the new reviews which are happening. They're so complex. Everyone understands data. Each and every employee asked access to Tableau and said, I want to analyze what the hell is happening. I think my last month's review took me each presentation, instead of taking 40 minutes, took 2 hours. First, I said, we'll log in after 2 hours. I have to read them. They're too complex. Everyone had analyzed each and every part, which really indicates that everyone is upgrading their skill sets to really analyze data in a far more granular manner. And you will see this across every individual that you will come across in the entire ecosystem of how you are building people, right? These are just I'm observing a few things on people. Now let's talk about the 8 skills which I think are coming dramatically different. First is the adaptability and flexibility. So when we have all got used to the new normal, right? uh, I think we saw the answer when liquor shop opened up. There was no problem. You'll wait for 1 hour in the line ना सब्जी के लिए भी एक घंटा खड़ा हो रहे थे हम लोग. कुछ भी ग्रोसरी खरीदने के लिए भी same part. There's no problem. We'll stand in queues, but the adaptability comes that fast. But the other part is that everyone will refresh things in the way they do. I mentioned about tech savviness. That's the second point. I think the third is earlier people dreamt of doing a product, but now they're going to dream of doing things in the way you do your work and the way you reach your customer. So the way of doing things is the new innovation going to do. It's not that I create a phone, but how I do the work to deliver the phone is going to be the next creativity. The fourth is on data literacy, and really that everyone is stepping in to make sense of the data. I think we saw earlier a few experts in companies who helped analyze data, but now it's going to be everyone is going to have the capability to analyze it themselves. Then I think the critical thinking mindset is going to come in across organizations, across roles, and each team leader will become more like a critical thinker to evaluate things. Uh, of course, in the bigger skill sets, technology-oriented people skill sets will be far more preferred, etc. Next on leadership, I think leadership definition is going to change. Earlier, the leader has to demonstrate everything himself to do. I think the demonstration of leadership is going to change to encouragement oriented leadership. And the last point, I think, to replace with EQ. Right now, this I think is the single most differentiation. Where it's I think the newer modern human workforce is going to come out, which is far more able to be have a stronger EQ connect to do work. Right. So yeah, these are my top 8.
Okay. All right. So you're saying that I think one important, very intense point is that every financial institution today is a fintech player. I think that's a very intense statement because you cannot live without digital. So this is also something to what Harpunit said. So it kind of ties into the same observation. Apart from that, you talked about adaptability, tech savviness, data literacy, learning new skills and all of that. So good. So we'll hear from Vedanaran.
Sure, Aditya. So at Razorpay, it's been a roller coaster ride over the last 2-3 months or so. And at Razorpay, for the ones who are unaware, we happen to be one of India's top fintech players. We are better known for our payment gateway, payment link suite of solutions which allow businesses to be able to receive funds. We also allow businesses to be able to pay out funds. And at Razorpay, we've had the opportunity to have a ringside perspective of the goings on of the SMB and startup ecosystem in India. And March was obviously a bit of a dull month. So was April. And we saw a lot of businesses which were shutting down. And by shutting down, essentially what we're saying is that businesses were not actually receiving funds, right? Because we have the opportunity, as I said, to actually look at, we like to think of ourselves as an index fund which sits on top of the entire SMB and startup ecosystem in India. And we have a clear sense of which are the industry categories which are going up, which are the industry categories which are actually going down because of COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID, etc. So obviously March and April were pretty bad months. But in terms of fresh acquisitions in April, we noticed some interesting trends. In terms of fresh acquisitions, we actually had our best month ever in the month of April. Just give me one moment. I'm just going to close my WhatsApp. So in the month of April, we had our best ever month in terms of fresh acquisitions, because although a lot of e-commerce shops, which were our traditional breadwinners, they actually shut down and they were actually not receiving funds in the month of April. Their drop was compensated for by the growth of edtech companies and by the growth of health tech companies, right? So both of these were actually booming because of the enforced need for virtual interaction. And people are actually looking to upskill, reskill from home. People are looking to discover healthier, fitter versions of themselves, etc. So both health tech and edtech were seeing a big boom. So in terms of fresh acquisitions in April, we were actually doing much better than what we did ever before in our history. And in the month of May, this month, we are on track to have our best ever month. We're also on track to beat April because we're seeing a lot of businesses, not only new businesses coming on board, but what we're also seeing is that businesses which previously shut down or which were previously not receiving funds, which we internally use the term of churn. I think a lot of SaaS companies would relate to that term. They were actually coming back to life. They were actually reviving, which was a very good thing for us. So because of a combination of these reasons, we are actually seeing a huge upsurge in our overall numbers this month. So the early indicators as we crystal ball gaze towards the rest of the year are extremely promising. We're very enthused about the opportunities that the SMB ecosystem, presents in India. We believe that the ecosystem is very resilient, and we will be able to bounce back. At least the lead indicators which are coming through are certainly pointing to that fact.
Okay, so that's nice. So essentially, you are talking about change in the consumer behavior, and their spend is changing on different subjects like an education technology, health technology, and things like that. Right? All right.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay. Avinash, what's your perspective?
I echo the sentiment of the previous speakers to a large extent. I think there are quite a few very interesting trends which were already present, right? So EQ versus IQ, digitization, a lot of these trends were already there, but these secular trends have become extremely powerful now. They have become ubiquitous. Everybody is following it. So I haven't seen the amount of video conferencing that, consumers are doing. Businesses were still doing it earlier. That has exploded. But what's very interesting is that, I was telling you, Aditya, my mom was never somebody who would, get onto a Facebook call or a Zoom call. But now that is how we communicate. So that's a very, very interesting change. Behavior change many times requires a shock. COVID obviously has been a shock to the entire world, and that has caused a fundamental behavior shift towards social distancing, towards digital, interacting digitally. I believe that trend is going to remain, because if this shock had been short term, you would have seen people to go back to their old ways. But it's already 3 months, and it's probably not going to, stabilize in the next 9 to 12 months. It's going to take a long time. And as Harpuneet said, it's the new normal, right?
Right.
So, that's
just on the topic, just a quick point, Aditya, just on the when Avinash was saying his mom and grandmother actually use Zoom right now. A couple of weeks back, I actually attended a Zoom wedding.
There you
There you go.
Yeah, the girl and boy were luckily in the same place. So they were in the same place. So they were in Hyderabad. The priest was in Ahmedabad along with the girl's parents. There was a screen share actually happening, and there were relatives who had dialed in from all over the world, right? From the US, from Europe, from Bangalore. Me and my wife had dialed in, people from Delhi, etc. So maybe a sign of things to come.
Yeah.
Lovely. Lovely.
I picked up a Zoom Pro subscription, and we were having a webinar.
So these are things which we would have completely laughed at 6 months ago, right? Even maybe this Feb, we would have laughed if somebody had said, no, I'm going to attend a Zoom wedding. But this is reality today, right? So very well said, Vedant. That is how it has changed. And I think that is also reflecting on the investment side. So one of the things which I was reading recently was a article which said, forget about unicorns, everybody is chasing camels, because camels can go through a tough phase and continue to march towards their goal and survive and, keep prodding towards their goal. And when things get, better, they again refill, right? So that is something which definitely has started to happen. Companies who are more focused on managing their expenses, more focused on understanding their cost base, data is the new oil. Again, a trend that was there probably for the last 10, 12 years. It's just got accelerated dramatically now. Oil, incidentally, and it's very poetic in some way that oil prices have tanked, right? While Jio, which is the mother company, is an oil company, but is raising truckloads of money in the data side, right? So it's very indicative of how the world has fundamentally changed in the last few months.
Right.
We on our end are seeing tremendous traction on the expense management side. We are seeing a lot of companies trying to figure out, SMEs trying to figure out where do they spend, do they need to spend on these categories, how can they optimize, look at data. So that's one trend which we are seeing a lot. We're seeing a lot of interest from companies in terms of wanting to measure performance, as well as measure performance and recognize performers, right? So these are times where a lot of companies that we interact with, we work with more than 3,000 companies, 3,500 companies, and companies are coming back and saying, look, this is the time where we are very clearly able to distinguish the employees who are self-motivated, who are driven, versus those who have always been sort of requiring a lot of push, right? And
Right.
recognizing such employees and measuring the overall performance of the company has become extremely, extremely important. And I think that's these trends are just going to keep going up and accelerating in the coming months and years. This is an irreversible change that we'll
Right.
see.
Right. Okay, that's good. So so far we all kind of heard from each one of you. I don't know what happened to Devi. Her line got disconnected or something.
Some network problem. She is trying to connect back.
Okay, that's okay. All right. So so far we got a lot of perspectives from each one of you. Maybe just to kind of push the envelope a little further, what we are essentially saying is one big thing. All of you are seeming to be saying that hey, there is a digital way of doing things. So right from acquiring new customers to monitoring people performance to maybe appraising the risk of customer profile, underwriting risks. Every aspect of the business is going to go digital. So what challenges do you think? Of course, the traditional players will face much bigger challenges. Like if it is a traditional bank or an NBFC, they are going to face much bigger challenge in kind of doing this. For example, we as an MSME, when we borrow money from an NBFC or from a bank, there is the amount of paperwork and the time that it takes and the number of goalposts that we have to pass, and goalposts or toll gates that we pass are kind of immense. Sometimes I wonder as an entrepreneur that maybe so much of energy, if I would have deployed in my market or work with my own team, I would have been able to deliver much better results to my stakeholders. That having been said, so the new age companies, the new age payments companies or peer-to-peer lending companies or marketplace for loans or any of these, how do you think that they will be able to adapt to this, or they have already adapted, or there are still ways of, there is still a room for improvement? If there are, what are they? So some perspectives from each one of you would be great.
Sure. Would you like to go to the same
Yeah.
sequence or?
It's okay. Now I guess we're already on a momentum, so whosoever picks it and takes it, that's fine.
I think now a very dramatic change is going to happen. Let's say first a temporary change from now to December. Bureau is going to be the most inaccurate data coming in to actually do risk decisioning, right? So traditional across the board, Bureau was still known as the threshold point, whether you lend or not lend, and you get a lot of data from them, and it was using for all our scorecards. Even fintechs were using a lot of bureau variables for their decisioning, but that is completely defunct, right? Till at least November, December, until moratorium issues completely layer off. That means that alternate data is going to become the largest differentiator. And let's say many companies who power some of the data, let's say PGs, so Razorpay, they have access to transactional data happening runtime. People have behavioral data of or HRMS platforms have actual salary data flowing through them. So those alternate data is going to become the most critical component to actually look at how finance or lending as entities will shape up, right? And that I think is going to be a large game changer happening. Right?
Okay.
Just to add to that, I agree. This is very true. And one of the things that's going to then happen through this is that you're going to see that this next 9 to 12 months for everybody is to be in a survival mode, right? You're trying to figure out how do we get through this time. As you do that, a lot of companies, and especially within the fintech space, you're going to see a lot more collaboration. So as Akshay was saying, Razorpay has this data. Earlier, maybe the idea would not have been to collaborate directly with Razorpay because there were alternatives. We were busy in our lives. But right now, you want to run your business efficiently. So can you engage with a Razorpay and figure out, hey, can we collaborate? So these collaborations are going to be there both with the traditional entities like banks. We are seeing a lot of banks become much more open to work and explore a lot more new ideas, because they don't want to. They have had issues in terms of getting the loan repayments. They've had issues. Obviously, deposits also have gravitated towards certain banks, the safe havens. So other banks need to survive and grow, right? So they're looking at other ways in which they can collaborate with fintechs. Of course, fintechs have started to collaborate with each other as well. Rather than competing for the same consumer, for the same SME, can we build some layers on top of each other and bring real value out to the ecosystem, rather than all the while, trying to sort of, capture each other's glory or something like that. So that, I think, is something which is going to really, really get accelerated in the coming months.
I agree with Avinash. I would echo the same thought. I think, and we were talking about this. Partnership, I think, is going to be the name of the game for this foreseeable future. I think it's going to be about, it's a much cliched term. It's about that network effect. I think a lot of fintechs have gone to give you an example, to have their own balance sheet. We're going to see a lot more of the platform play going forward. That's the trend we're going to see in the lending space, at least. And the second thing we're going to see is a lot of partnerships, which Avinash talked about, with the more traditional players partnering with fintechs. We've seen a lot of interest from the traditional players talking about, okay, how can you help us make our underwriting platforms, help them evolve? For example, we were talking about, Avinash was talking about, and Akshay was talking about alternative data sets. I think traditional lenders have realized that their underwriting platforms don't really fit into the current scenario. So they're talking to fintechs like ourselves, and as Avinash was talking about, using more holistic data sets. So for that, fintechs will also need to collaborate with players like Razorpay, for example, or some of the HRMS platforms like Akshay was talking about, to use these data sets for more current underwriting, because we all knew, I mean, and always just bureau data itself, it was more of a validation in my view, because we always knew it has its limitations. But yes, in the current scenario, I don't think for some time we can rely on it entirely. So I think these are some of the changes that we will see.
Okay.
Aditya, from a Razorpay perspective, there have been a couple of key strategic pivots that we've actually made over the last 2-3 months or so, which we see actually bearing fruit. The first was the entire pivot wherein we've come to the realization that the payment receivables side of the business, right, where we allow businesses to be able to receive money, that is getting fast commoditized. So there is a need for brands to differentiate and to innovate in that particular space. And so that is one thing that we've been doing. In addition, what we've also done is we've decided to position the brand as not just a receivable solution provider, a brand that lets businesses receive money, but as an end-to-end money movement player. So we've spoken about end-to-end money movement. We let businesses to be able to receive money, to be able to pay out money through our neo banking solution. And we also opened up working capital as a separate line of business within the entire brand's value proposition. So essentially, we've got 3 distinct lines of businesses, which essentially positions the brand as an end-to-end money movement solution provider. And that's something that has resonated well with the SMB audience. That's one. The second is, somebody was talking about partner-led growth. That's something that we have also seen, especially now in the times of COVID, where everybody is looking to conserve cash. Marketing dollars are also going to be hard to come by, right? So we can't keep relying on the Googles and the Facebooks of the world, right? So we need to discover other avenues for scalable growth. And one of the biggest playbooks for success when it comes to channel partner-led growth in India is Tally, right? They've got possibly more than 1 million. I know they've been doing it for more than 30 years now, but they have more than 1 million customers, and their marketing spend is all of zero. And they've done it only through channel partners, right? And that is an aspirational role model for us. And we do realize that the next wave of SMBs and startups that come on board and start accepting and embracing digital payments will actually come from tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 and below in India. And we can't just keep focusing on the metro cities in India for our next wave of growth. And that will not come through advertising through Facebook and Google. The growth from tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 and below, it has to come through channel partnerships. And that is a conscious and a strategic focus for the entire organization.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Correct.
So it's a good point that Veda has raised about other avenues of growth, whether it's Facebook and Google is not going to possibly be the main source, but it's going to be through partnerships. So do you have any other any perspective to offer on this particular point? You have a different view, or how do you look at it? About the other avenues of growth? I mean, maybe Akshay, Avinash. I mean, in fact,
Let's look
all
at-
your businesses are.
So I'll
sort
give
of-
an example. I think we
Yeah.
differentiated ourselves in doing two things in our model. One, of course, we were large on Facebook, Google, but we said we also want to create the corporate channel and partnerships there. So we went and tied up with 500 directly with corporates. The second thing we said is partnership is important. I can't hire a 500 member team like Naukri to go and tie up with each company at a time and come. So we've gone and now tied up with 3-4 large HRMS partners who then go and help reach out to next level companies.
Right.
Similarly, we are also powering so we are powering our own competition with, interestingly. So 3 of the mobile OEMs, we are powering all 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, if I look at 60% of mobile phones carry a pre-installed product which is powered by me for consumer lending. So I said, let's create my own competition. Otherwise, you won't own the category.
Mm.
Right. So rather than creating competition, partner, make sure you are the sole provider to him so that he can become larger and you can have a share of his pie also. So I think those are some of the things which happened earlier. I would say the last 6 months we have been working on these and they're all live today. But I think post-COVID partnership will become even to the next level. Interestingly, everyone is lending. So the SIM card provider is lending, the mobile phone is lending, the Truecaller platform is lending, where your call identification is lending. Your OTT player has started integrating to lend himself. Your taxi provider is lending. You have exclusive lenders. You have banks who lend. You have your Flipkart, Amazon who lend to you. So everyone is lending, right? So if the PGs are also lending. Who's left?
And interestingly enough, we launched a suite of solutions which we're calling as affordability solutions recently, which offer merchants the ability to be able to, with zero integration, you can offer EMI solutions, for example.
Yeah,
For
so exactly, we are live with Razorpay for all their merchants. Right? Take EMIs on that. So the idea that is going to be that how you partner everyone in that ecosystem, because if in true format, lending is always the highest monetization. Right? People you will always need money, but there are going to be 2-3 formats of lending which will get a little more flavored. For example, discretionary spends will come down.
Yeah.
Which means that you may decide you can afford buying the new iPhone 10R or something new which will come out, or 11 SE or something which comes out, but you will prefer to buy it in 5,000 rupees a month just for the mental satisfaction.
Right.
Right. So someone will be needed to convert into an EMI because the manufacturer still needs his payment upfront because he only has 9% margin on the product.
Yeah.
Right. So you will see such evolution taking place, which are discretionary earlier, but now financed by EMI to make the transaction happen. So that's going to be the change in the next for the next 24 months happening.
Right. Right. Arpunit, you had a view on this?
Okay, my view on this is again from the we are a very B2B focused business. So again, my view on this is that in the MSME business, the one shift we're going to see is less balance sheet play, more platform based play. So one of the things we saw was more traditional players coming to us and asking us to help them accelerate their digital journey.
Mm-hmm.
And these are players, not your typically big banks or your very household name NBFCs, but some of the smaller players, very, very traditional in their approach, and suddenly this hit them. And it was like, okay, how do we adapt very quickly? And so it was we were helping them with the whole platform play and accelerate the whole digitization journey. We are doing. So again, it was a strictly more of a partnership from that perspective. And again, very, very asset light.
Right.
And partnership with balance sheet player on the other side to lend balance sheet, because again, in this kind of an environment, we cannot really, we would like to keep it as asset light as possible. So we see all of those models. Again, on the customer acquisition side, and I think Veda mentioned it, that we really cannot afford to go with a Facebook or a Google to do customer acquisition because we're a relatively new player. So we tied up with, what we call anchor partners to provide financing to their ecosystem. So that's really our model. And we see that this is the way things are going to pan out, because I mentioned at the very beginning that really we believe the players who are going to be successful are who watch their unit economics very, very carefully, who watch their P&L very, very carefully.
Right.
Very acutely conscious of that.
Correct.
And
Okay.
Akshay mentioned it that and someone mentioned it to me a long time back, that today a bank, for example, and this resonates Akshay's thought, is essentially a technology company which incidentally does some banking.
Yeah.
So really, I think, how do we really differentiate ourselves? I think the way we can differentiate ourselves is with the strength of these partnerships and who we can
Right.
bring to our ecosystem.
Okay. Super. All right. So moving on now to the aspect of talent. What kind of talent all of you, or the entire sector, all the companies in the sector are going to grow in their portfolios and grow in their presence in terms of the number of partnerships that they have. So it would, if not on a proportionate basis, but there would be always the need to get new kind of talent, grow the organizations. So when you think of a talent strategy for your organization from a business, all of you are business leaders. So what is it that you would expect the talent strategy in your organization to be? So by talent strategy, what I mean is what kind of talent would you like to have? What kind of competencies you would like to focus more on? And how do you think that these need to be developed? What kind of behaviors you would like to reward more? So some thoughts on this. Maybe the audience would be interested in knowing all of this, and since this is more, a lot of HR people are there in the audience, so it could be good for them to also hear from the business leaders perspective.
See, this is something, again, is a trend which has been there in the last few years, which just got accelerated, right? Because now with work from home, how much supervision are you going to be able to do? I mean, I look at my son's schooling. Now he's attending classes from home. There's probably a couple of hours a day they're spending with the teachers. Earlier, they were spending 7, right? So even for an 11-year-old, the supervision angle has gone down, right? So you need to be taking ownership of your work. You need to be thinking entrepreneurial. You need to be able to say, how can I add value, innovate beyond what the task that has been assigned to me? So a level of ownership, a level of accountability has to be much higher. Also able to keep yourself motivated, right? So this is something which is, because the times are tough, it's tough to work from home, possibly you're hearing bad news around you. So can you be very resilient and can you stay positive in face of challenges? That is, I think, something which is going to be very important on the softer side. Hard skills, of course, anybody who is not comfortable with the data, who's not comfortable with technology or the tech tools, is going to have a very hard time in the coming years, both to find a job and to stay relevant. So to the audience, if you have some of these challenges, there are more than enough edtech platforms today which allow you to upskill yourself. So I would highly recommend people to not waste any time and just do that. Also, I think people who are going to be able to think from a very, very, focused manner in terms of how do I bring value? Because organizations are going to start rewarding people who bring demonstrable value to the company, right? So long meetings, discussions may not have that much of a space or role today. It's more going to be about focus, execution. Can I deliver value? And is it demonstrable? And those are
Okay, good points. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, maybe I'll start next. I think I think
Yeah.
there are two elements to the entire part. One is about really getting the right employees who are focused more on data, self motivation, high EQ to do work, right? Second is how do we make sure that the employee should embrace work from home in the right manner. So,
Hmm.
I think as let's say some of the recruiters who are listening on in this call, how you really ask the right questions to find out can he work from home actually or not.
Yeah.
Right? I'll give an example. We had many telecallers who help us in collections recovery.
Right.
They were fearless when they spoke to customers when they were in office, but they can't make the same phone call at home.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right? They just can't talk in that language. They don't have that ambience, etc., available, and they just can't use that tone.
Yeah.
Right now, I think suddenly the question really changes. Then, um, how and you come and say no. So how do you really? First reaction was, oh, the productivity is down, but no. When you understood the problem, you said no. The overall scripts needs to change. That means the entire training vertical has to also change of how to manage such people. How do you recruit them? How do you train them? How do you manage the entire practice? So as you said, for the HR community listening here, it's really starts from ground up. That if you're going to if you have to prepare for a new culture that people can work from home, you need to make sure that he can work from home without supervision. You can work from home saying that he can do it at home in the same productivity and the same manner you see him when he's in front of you in office, in your controlled atmosphere. So how do
Right.
you build a new way of doing work?
Sure.
um, I think apart from I think Avinash covered about really all the other elements.
Okay. Good. Good. Yeah. Harpreet, please
I
go.
think I think the hard skills are pretty much understood. I think Akshay, sorry, said it pretty well early on in this panel discussion. For example,
Data literacy and all of that,
the
adaptability, tech savviness, and all.
absolutely. I think the softer skill aspects are going to be very, very important going forward because it's not, I think it's stating the obvious, it's not possible to go into the office and collaborate. How does this individual, uh, more important to be a self-starter? I think that's something that we all have to evaluate. Ability to
Right.
be unsupervised. And I will add to what Avinash said. How do we, for an individual who's working remotely, how do you measure that demonstrated tangible value? I think we'll all have to adapt to that very, very, very quickly. So when we're looking for somebody, I think we'll also going forward, rather than making more generic hires, we will be hiring for very, very specific requirements.
Right.
Yes.
That's a shift that's going to happen.
Right. Right.
It's a little unfortunate for people who are out there in the job market. So I think I would recommend anyone who's out there in the job market to focus on acquiring very, very specific skills. I think that's something which are in demand in the coming time, and those would be in the areas of course, data, digital transformation. I
Sure.
think those very specific skills will be.
Sure. All right. Good. Yeah, Veda.
So, a couple of interesting points. So, a lot of people are talking about upskilling and reskilling. We are already seeing that happening because we are seeing a lot of edtech companies receiving more and more money from their customers, right? At
Right.
Razorpay, we
Right.
are actually we have advantage. We are in an advantage position to be able to have that perspective. So we know that in a
It's
data backed way, we know that to be a fact.
it's happening.
Yeah, the other thing that we're also noticing is the fact that so when we acquire merchants, there are a couple of different ways in which we acquire it. Right, one is the sales led, human led approach of actually bringing on board merchants, and the second is, as we like to call it, self serve, wherein merchants actually come on board and they sign up, become transacting merchants only through product and marketing, without a human being actually picking up the phone and having a conversation, etc., etc. So some of the things that we are pivoting to focus on is we are having lesser of performance marketing and paid marketing focus. We want organic marketing to be able to do more heavy lifting. So there is greater focus on SEO. So anybody who is skilled in SEO, for example, especially in the post-COVID world, where cash is going to be hard to come by and everybody is looking at cash conservation, that is going to be a very important skill set to have. And the other is if you can focus on marketing automation, for example, and if you can provide, and if you're very strong with products and with marketing automation, and allow a playbook for businesses to be able to bring on board customers without human involvement, that is a fantastic skill set to possess. So obviously you want to have larger and larger sales teams, but especially in spaces like SMB, where a lot of interactions and sales are not high touch selling, they are not in-person selling, a lot of it is virtual. Technology will start taking over further and further. So now if you can build skill sets which align with that trend, then you are in the job market again.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So good perspectives. I think we had a wonderful discussion. All of you contributed really your perspectives. I hope that some of you know each other, but I hope we helped you all grow your own network. Somebody, at least one more person. Sometime you could offline connect. And of course, we are there for any other help. Thanks for each one of your perspective. I'm just being conscious of the time. So we want to close exactly at 5, and Akshay also has got a board meeting. So we will end at 5. So over to you, Chami, if you have anything to.
Sure, sir. Thank you very much. So it was a great session. I am, first of all, on behalf of Devi ma'am, I would like to apologize to the panel. She had some internet problem and couldn't, be with us. Well, to conclude, it was a very insightful discussion that we had. We realized a lot of things, not just for the fintech market, but also about the organizations that you guys are leading. And it was quite informative. I'm sure not just me, even our audience have gained some knowledge around this. So thank you guys for your time, and rocket speed growth to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you all. We got some questions. So since we have come to an end of this conference, we'll offline connect. So there was a question for Akshay, possibly for HR. Someone from the HR fraternity will send you the question, and if you give the answer, we'll publish it later. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
thanks
Thank you,
very
everybody.
much.
Thank you, everybody. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Bye. Yeah, how do you think today the thing went? Yeah.
It went good. In fact, I think it was better than the fintech one. Are we still live?
Yeah. Today,